Okay, and here we go. Another Sunday, another week gone by. Got a few folks in here now. I have a lot of different topics, but mainly to do with this election. That is ongoing here, the pre-election, the campaigns. I will say it's getting interesting. I will also say that it's getting kind of nasty, to say the least. Now, we'll get a few more on here, and I do have an announcement to make partway through. I think you'll find interesting. So, Marie, Lynn, Mr. Magoo. Okay, the three early birds. Now, I'd like to get a couple more on here. I've been back on Grok, but I've hit it, went at it a different way than last time. So I've got my questions in and my answers up in front of me. So it's going to work a lot better this time. No more delays or trying to type things in with one finger. So once we get a couple more, okay, looks like we can get rolling now. Hope the audio is good. If the audio is good, let me know. Give me a 1 or a thumbs up or something if the audio is okay. If it's coming through. I think it is. According to my monitor, it looks like it's okay. Just want to check with you folks while we get rolling. I know last week there was an audio issue that the volume was down quite low. I hope it's up now. I'll wait till I get a confirmation there how the audio is doing. It's good? Okay, right on. Here we go. So, I was on Grok again, and I asked some questions. The first question I asked, what are Mark Carney's connections to WEF and net zero? And the reply was, Mark Carney has significant connections to the World Economic Forum. I know this isn't news to a lot of you, all of you probably. But anyways, and the global push for net zero emissions, reflecting his extensive career in finance, climate action, and economic policy. Carney has been involved with the WEF in multiple capacities. He was a member of the WEF's foundation board, so he was one of the founding people of the WEF, its highest governing body, though he is no longer listed in that role as of recent updates. I'm sure he called up Schwab and said, hey, listen, buddy, you better get me off of there. I'm running for leadership of the country, Canada. Currently, he's recognized as an agenda contributor, meaning he actively provides insights and opinions to shape WEF discussions and initiatives. So he's still sending information over to WEF. That's no surprise, but that's what he's up to. So as he's running the country, basically illegally right now, during an election and unelected, he is siphoning information, sending it over to Schwab in the WEF. His participation includes speaking at the annual Davos meetings and on topics such as monetary policy, global economic outlooks, and more prominently in recent years, climate finance and sustainability. For instance, during a 2023 WEF panel, Carney identified himself as a European, highlighting his Irish citizenship, while discussing the transition to a net zero economy, emphasizing the economic opportunities tied to climate action. Regarding net zero, Carney has been a leading figure in aligning financial systems with climate goals. As the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance, a role he held until stepping down in early 2025, he worked to mobilize private finance toward achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. He co-founded and co-chaired the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ, launched at COP26 in 2021, and he's been indicted for that in the U.S., by the way, which brings together financial institutions to support the transition to a net zero economy. Carney has argued that this transition represents a major commercial opportunity, emphasizing that investments in climate solutions can yield strong returns while addressing the existential threat of climate change. He's also advocated for tools like high integrity voluntary carbon markets and mandatory climate-related financial disclosures such as those from the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, which he helped establish during his tenure as chair of the Financial Stability Board from 2011 to 2018. So, in summary, Carney's ties to the WEF involve both past governance roles and ongoing contributions to its climate and economic agendas, while his net zero efforts span leadership in global financial alliances, UN advocacy, and private sector investment strategies, all aimed at accelerating the shift to a sustainable economy. So that's the lowdown on Carney with the WEF and his net zero, which will come into play a little later here. So, you may have seen that Mark Carney had a rally at Nepean. That's the riding in Ontario, where it's an Ottawa suburb, I believe, where he is, they booted out Chandra Arya, that had been there for 10 years. They took his 350 grand, booted him out, said you can't run, and dropped Carney in. So, my question was, how many people were at Mark Carney's Nepean rally, and how many at Pierre Poilievre's rally in Surrey, BC? Well, the answer I got was the exact attendance figures for Mark Carney's Nepean rally and Pierre Poilievre's Surrey, BC rally are not definitively confirmed in official records. As such, events typically don't release precise verified counts. However, based on available reporting and estimates from media and observers, here's what can be pieced together as of March 30th, 2025. For Mark Carney's rally in Nepean, which occurred as part of his campaign in the Ottawa riding where he is seeking election, specific attendance numbers are scarce. Reports indicate he visited his campaign office on March 29th and was greeted by a small but enthusiastic group of campaign workers and volunteers. No local residents. No local residents, just some campaign workers and some volunteers. Other coverage of Carney's campaign events, such as one in St. John's on March 23, 2025, noted a few hundred people, while a Kitchener event was described as having a modest turnout, with a subsequent rally, Montreal rally on March 27th, drawing a smaller crowd than Kitchener. No specific figure is provided for the Nepean event itself, but based on the pattern of Carney's rallies, averaging a few hundred and peaking at around 1,000 elsewhere, that's a high estimate from some sources, it's reasonable to infer that the Nepean rally likely drew hundreds, possibly 200 to 500 attendees. This is speculative due to the lack of data or direct data for that specific event. For Pierre Poilievre's rally in Surrey, BC, held on March 27th at an industrial building in the Langley Township, Fraser Heights riding, my old neighborhood, estimates vary but point to a significantly larger turnout. Media reports, including from the Surrey Now Leader and Rebel News, suggest over 5,000 people attended, with a Conservative Party campaign staffer cited as claiming 5,500 attendees, making it Poilievre's largest rally to date. Other accounts, such as Vancouver City News and Maple Ridge Pitt Meadows News, confirmed thousands packed the warehouse, with some attendees facing long wait times, indicating a high demand. Posts on X have echoed this, with claims ranging from 4,000 to over 5,000, though these lack photographic or official corroboration. A more cautious analysis from an AI source on X suggested 2,400 based on venue size and descriptions, but this seems low given consistent reporting of thousands. A plausible range balancing these accounts is 4,000 to 5,500 attendees, with a higher end supported by party claims and media descriptions. Carney got possibly 2 to 500, but it says on the low end of that. Pierre got 4,000 to 5,500. That's quite a difference. The polls don't reflect that, do they? So the contrast reflects differing levels of public mobilization, with Poilievre's event drawing a significantly larger crowd, consistent with reports of his rallies outpacing Carney's in attendance across the campaign. These numbers remain estimates, as precise headcounts depend on unverifiable claims from organizers and subject of media reports. So, the polls have got the Conservatives really way down and the Liberals really way up. But when you look at the numbers at the rallies, it's way different. It doesn't make sense. So, they're making promises. Carney, I was interested in what Carney would have to say about energy. He keeps talking about clean energy. I'm wondering, okay, the only clean energy I can think of is electricity, probably coming from hydro. But with Carney, he probably, he's really into these windmills and solar panels, which are covered in snow in the wintertime and froze up in the winter. It's Javier. I finally know how to pronounce your name. Javier. Now, what does Mark Carney mean by clean energy and his views on the oil and gas industry in Canada? Mark Carney's references to clean energy and his views on Canada's oil and gas industry reflect his broader vision of transitioning to a net zero economy while balancing economic realities. Here's a breakdown based on his public statements and actions. Clean energy. By clean energy, Carney generally means energy sources and technologies that produce little to no greenhouse gas emissions, aligning with the goal of reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This includes renewables like wind, solar, hydro, and geothermal, as well as emerging technologies such as green hydrogen and advanced nuclear, like example, small modular reactors. He often frames clean energy as part of a systemic shift encompassing not just power generation, but also energy efficiency, electrification of transport, electric vehicles that don't work real good in Canada in the wintertime, and industrial processes that reduce carbon intensity. During his tenure as UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance, he emphasized mobilizing private capital for these sectors, arguing they represent both a climate solution and a massive economic opportunity, potentially a 100 trillion global market over decades. As he's cited in speeches like those at COP26 and WEF panels, I don't see that myself. Who am I? I just don't see it. I did work in the energy industry, oil and gas. For Canada specifically, Carney has highlighted its potential to lead in clean energy due to its vast renewable resources. Example, hydroelectric capacity in Quebec and Manitoba, and technological expertise. He's advocated for investments in clean tech like carbon capture, utilization, and storage as a bridge to decarbonize existing industries, including oil and gas. In a 2023 WEF discussion, he described the transition to clean energy as the greatest commercial opportunity of our age, suggesting Canada could export clean power and know-how globally. I don't know how we're going to export power from windmills and solar panels, maybe from small nuclear reactors, but they're basically localized in the cities, not really for exporting power. I think we're going to need the hydropower we've got. I don't think we have a lot of wild rivers that we can start damming up, and that usually causes issues with the native population in the area. It's their hunting and fishing, and they don't like people damming it up and flooding them out. I don't blame them. Views on oil and gas industry in Canada. Carney's stance on Canada's oil and gas sector is pragmatic, yet firmly oriented toward decarbonization. He doesn't call for an immediate shutdown, but stresses that the industry must adapt to a world moving away from fossil fuels. I call BS on that. As Governor of the Bank of Canada 2008 to 2013, and later in his climate roles, he's acknowledged the sector's economic importance, contributing about 5 to 7% to Canada's GDP and tens of thousands of jobs, especially in Alberta. However, he views its long-term viability as tied to reducing emissions and aligning with global net zero targets. He's been critical of unchecked expansion, warning that new oil and gas projects risk becoming stranded assets as demand peaks and declines, a point he made as early as 2015 at the Bank of England, citing climate-related financial risks. In Canadian context, he's suggested the industry should pivot toward lower emission production, like using CCUS, that's the carbon capture, to mitigate emissions from oil sands, and diversify into areas like hydrogen, where natural gas could play a role if paired with carbon capture. In 2021 interview with the Globe and Mail, he noted that the world will still need some oil and gas in 2050, but stressed it must be the cleanest possible barrel, implying Canada should focus on efficiency and emissions reductions rather than volume growth. All we need is pipelines. Oil's not going out of style. Gas isn't going out of style. As a matter of fact, electric vehicles are going out of style, Carney. His role at Brookfield Asset Management, which invests in both renewable energy and some fossil fuel infrastructure in other countries, underscores this duality. Critics, including Alberta politicians and oil advocates, have accused him of hypocrisy or anti-oil bias, pointing to his net zero advocacy while Brookfield holds stakes in fossil fuel projects. Carney counters that such investments are transitional, aimed at decarbonizing existing assets rather than expanding reliance on them. During a 2025 campaign event in Calgary, he reportedly told oil workers, "Your skills are part of the solution," suggesting retraining for clean energy roles rather than outright job losses. So to sum it up, in broader context, Carney's views tie into his WEF and GFAN's work, where he pushes his financial systems to redirect capital from high-emission industries to clean alternatives. He sees Canada's oil and gas sector as needing to shrink its carbon footprint dramatically, potentially cutting emissions by 40 to 50% by 2030. It's only 5 years away. It's actually less than that, because if we're talking January of 2030, right? Per Paris Agreement, aligned pathways. While leveraging its resources strategically during the transition, he's less ideological than some environmentalists, avoiding blanket bans, but unequivocal that fossil fuels dominance must end for net zero to succeed. In short, clean energy for Carney is a broad, investable shift to low-carbon systems, and his oil and gas stance is about managed decline and adaptation, not abolition, within Canada's economic and global climate realities. And that's that. So, we know he wants to kill the oil and gas industry. It's right there, and those are his policies, those are his dreams, those are his plans. But that's for Canada, right? That's not for other countries where he's invested along with Brookfield. So then I asked, Well, what are the differences between Mark Carney's platform and Pierre Poilievre's platform, and also their views on the Century Initiative? What I got for an answer on that was Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, as of March 30th, 2025, present distinct platforms in their bids to lead Canada, reflecting their differing backgrounds, priorities, and visions for the country. Below is a comparison of their platforms based on available campaign statements, public positions, and their views on the Century Initiative, a think tank advocating for Canada's population to reach 100 million by 2100. Mark Carney's platform. Carney, the Liberal leader and former central banker, has positioned himself as a pragmatic, globally experienced leader focused on economic stability, climate action, and managing external threats like U.S. tariffs under Donald Trump. His platform, launched during the 2025 election campaign, includes his economic policy. Carney proposes a middle-class tax cut affecting up to 22 million Canadians, a 1% reduction. Whoa! In the lowest marginal tax rate. I can hardly wait. Elimination of GST on new or renovated homes under $1 million for first-time buyers. And no increases to the capital gains tax proposed in 2024. That's what Trudeau wanted to do. That Mark Carney was coaching Trudeau, and that blew up on them. So all of a sudden now he's not going to increase that capital gains tax because he can't, because Pierre said he was going to. He emphasizes reducing government spending and overlap with provinces to expedite major projects. Get those windmills built. And adopting some fiscal restraint ideas typically associated with conservatives. To decipher that, the plans he stole from the conservatives, I guess. Climate change, despite axing the consumer carbon tax, which he really didn't do, so Grok is wrong on a few things here. A move seen as politically expedient. Carney remains committed to net zero goals. He advocates shifting to an industrial carbon pricing system, output-based pricing system, maintaining an emissions cap on oil and gas, and investing in clean energy. Here we go again. Renewables, hydrogen, and carbon capture. He frames this as both an environmental necessity and an economic opportunity. More hogwash. It doesn't matter what we do here. It's not going to affect China and India and some of the other big polluting countries. But he thinks it will. He tries to tell people it will. Housing and affordability. Carney links immigration levels to housing supply. That's a conservative plan, but he stole that one too. Supporting caps until construction catches up. Yep, that's took the words right out of Pierre's mouth. His GST cut targets housing affordability. It's another conservative point that Pierre had come up with, but Carney stole it. Though it's narrower than Poilievre's version, applying only to first-time buyers. Foreign relations. With Trump's tariff threats looming, Carney leverages his international credentials. Example, Bank of England and UN roles. He's not real popular over in England. He's kind of destroyed their economy. He uses those credentials to position himself as the best negotiator, promising a carbon border adjustment mechanism. That's a tariff on high emission imports to protect Canadian interests. So he's going to drive up the cost of anything we import from other countries. Thanks, Carney. It doesn't affect him because he's got truckloads of money. Tone and style. Carney's approach is polished and technocratic. He's a technocrat. Appealing to centrist voters and corporate Canada. Critics argue it feels top-down and detached from everyday struggles, though he's tried to counter this with populist-leaning promises, which he will never follow through on, right? Pierre Poilievre's platform. Poilievre, the Conservative leader, has built a populist grassroots campaign under the slogan Canada First for a Change, focusing on affordability, government overreach, and national sovereignty. His platform includes economic policy. Poilievre promises a larger tax cut, 2.25% reduction in the lowest marginal tax rate. That's going to help the poorest of the poor that pay taxes. Scrapping the industrial carbon tax entirely and eliminating GST on all new homes under 1 million. He's bumped that up to 1.5, I believe, and not just first-time buyers. He aims to cut government waste, reduce bureaucracy, and lower taxes to boost take-home pay and business competitiveness. On climate change, Poilievre opposes carbon pricing, calling it an economic burden, and has no detailed alternative for emissions reduction. He prioritizes energy affordability and security, promising to unleash Canada's resource sector, oil, gas, and mining, by removing regulatory barriers, contrasting sharply with Carney's decarbonization focus. On housing and affordability, Poilievre ties housing to immigration explicitly, vowing to cap levels and sell federal land to spur construction. He also proposes tying infrastructure funds to housing starts and cutting red tape, aiming for a simpler, faster fix than Carney's market-oriented approach. On foreign relations, Poilievre casts himself as a tough defender against Trump, promising to rebuild the military, secure borders, and boost resource exports to reduce U.S. reliance. I think that's what Trump asked in the beginning, was for Canada to rebuild the military, secure the borders, stop the fentanyl from coming across the border. Critics question his diplomatic finesse, given polls showing some see him as likely to roll over to Trump's demands. Too late, Pierre. Carney already did. Tone and style. Poilievre's combative, direct style resonates with voters frustrated by rising costs and perceived elite disconnect. His axe the tax and anti-gatekeeper rhetoric targets working class and suburban Canadians, but alienates some moderates and business leaders. Views on the Century Initiative. Mark Carney. This seeks to grow Canada's population to 100 million by 2100 through immigration. And it's a flashpoint in the campaign, and it should be. Mark Carney. Carney hasn't explicitly endorsed the Century Initiative's 100 million goal, but his appointment of co-founder Mark Wiseman to his Canada-U.S. Relations Advisory Council has fueled Poilievre's attacks. Carney supports immigration, but ties it to housing capacity, saying current caps or similar levels should stay until infrastructure improves. This suggests a cautious openness to population growth aligned with his economic growth focus, but not a full embrace of the initiative's scale. He stole that from Pierre too, by the way. He can't think of anything on his own except windmills and solar panels, and Trudeau took the unicorn when he left, I guess. His silence on this specific target leaves room for interpretation, though his globalist leanings with WEF make critics suspicious of his stance. Pierre Poilievre vehemently opposes the Century Initiative, calling it a radical liberal agenda that would double Canada's population during a housing crisis. He argues it's impractical and destructive, promising to stop it and return to common sense immigration, levels that match jobs, housing, and healthcare capacity. At his March 23, 2025 campaign launch, he pledged to cap immigration, deport criminals, and reject what he calls uncontrolled population growth, positioning himself as a protector of Canada's current way of life. What's left of it that the Liberals haven't completely trashed, right, folks? The key differences: economic policy, Carney blends fiscal moderation with climate-driven investment. Poilievre pushes tax cuts and deregulation with resource-first mindset. On the climate stance, Carney prioritizes net zero with market tools. Poilievre dismisses carbon taxes and bets on fossil fuels. Immigration and Century Initiative, Carney is pragmatic but linked to the initiative via Wiseman, while Poilievre outright rejects it, favoring strict controls. If Carney was against it, why did he get Mark Wiseman in there with them? Doesn't make sense, does it? It's not like Carney doesn't lie. I don't know how many times he's been caught now in the first week or two. When he wasn't stealing Pierre's ideas, then he was lying. Leadership approach. Carney offers stability and expertise. Poilievre channels populist anger and promises disruption. I like populist anger and disruption because I don't like Carney's stability and expertise. His stability and expertise is going to sink us. In essence, Carney's platform is a centrist pivot from Trudeau's liberalism, borrowing some conservative ideas, but rooted in globalist and climate priorities. Poilievre's is a rejection of that legacy, doubling down on affordability and national sovereignty with the Century Initiative as a symbolic divide. Carney tied it to it indirectly, Poilievre wielding it as a rallying cry against liberal excess. So that is a little bit of difference between the two. It's night and day. It always has been anyways, but this is really gone. Like wild. Look at the U.S. 2024. Fortunately, the election went the right way for the Americans. I'm only hoping we can get ours to go the right way for Canadians. Before I forget, tomorrow it's 6 o'clock Atlantic time, so it'll be 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I will be doing a live stream of Pierre Poilievre rally here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So it should be interesting. He's got a large venue rented. We've got some protesters are planning to show up. They're advertising. They're telling people to contact them. They got face masks so they can cover their faces and they can stand there and harass people. And that's fine as long as they stay out of my face. If they get in my face, they're going to wish they didn't. Unless, of course, there's authorities there, and then I just got to let it be dealt with. But I'm not going to have some yahoo getting his nose up to my nose, because he won't have a mask on very long, or he or she won't have a mask on very long, and I'll have my camera on to get a video of them. That'll be outside getting in. I'll be there a couple hours early. My next question for Grok. What are Mark Carney's views on censorship and freedoms and ESG? And the answer was Mark Carney's views on censorship, freedoms, and ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria can be inferred from his public statements, policy positions, and actions throughout his career, though he rarely addresses these topics head-on in isolation. I wonder why. As of March 30th, 2025, here's a synthesis based on his roles as a central banker, UN envoy, liberal leader, and private sector figure. Censorship. Carney has not explicitly outlined a stance on censorship. It's not a real good election topic, is it? Not as a standalone issue, such as government control over speech or media. However, his technocratic approach and alignment with global institutions like the WEF and UN suggest a preference for managed discourse over unrestricted expression when it comes to systemic goals like climate action or economic stability. Yeah, he don't like you talking about that, does he? For instance, during his time as governor of the Bank of England, he emphasized the need for credible frameworks to address misinformation about financial risks, including climate-related ones, which could imply support for curating information to protect public interest rather than censoring for ideological reasons. In his 2025 campaign, Carney has avoided culture war topics like online speech regulation, focusing instead on economic and climate priorities. His silence on Canada's Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act. And it just so happens, folks, that Google just paid out 2 weeks ago, their first installment, I believe it was, on that act to the media, and they received hundreds of millions of dollars, I think it was. And what happened? The attack came on the Conservatives right away. All that money was put right into their coffers to start attacking the Conservatives. Or Bill C-18, the Online News Act, which if I go online to try to look something up, it's not available in Canada. I run into that a lot. I even try a VPN, and I'm trying to get around it, and I still run into it. So they got us unlocked down here pretty good on information, right? They're both criticized by some as encroaching on free expression. Suggests either disinterest or a strategic choice to not alienate voters on divisive issues. Don't want to touch that one on the 10-foot pole, he doesn't know. Without direct statements, it's plausible he'd favor light touch oversight to counter disinformation, like on climate denialism. We're not climate deniers. I say the climate's changing. I say it's cyclical. It's not caused by us because we know that there was an ice age, and we know that Alberta was actually an inland sea, and we have tropical flora fossils. So we were once tropical, even all the way up to the Arctic. But they'll deny that. But we know it's true because fossils don't lie. Anyways, while preserving democratic norms consistent with his centrist establishment persona. I've collected fossils from out west. Carney's views on freedoms are framed through an economic and systemic lens rather than a libertarian or civil liberties one. He champions economic freedom in the sense of opportunity. Those with the money make the money is what I think that means. His campaign promise of a middle-class tax cut and housing affordability measures aims to give Canadians more financial autonomy. Yeah, he can do that because they've destroyed the middle class, so they don't have to worry about helping the middle class out anymore. However, his climate agenda implies trade-offs with individual and industry freedoms. His support for emissions caps on oil and gas and industrial carbon pricing, even after scrapping the consumer carbon tax. Look, this is wrong. Grok is wrong again. He didn't scrap it. All he did was put it on hold at zero until after the election. That suggests he's comfortable with regulatory constraints on businesses to achieve collective goals like net zero. So, okay, they're saying this says he scrapped the consumer carbon tax, but he's heading for net zero. How do you get there, right? He's also spoken about balancing freedoms with responsibility. You got to balance your freedom here in Canada, folks. Carney's going to balance our freedoms for us. How thoughtful of him. In a 2021 values book excerpt, Carney argued that markets and societies thrive when individual liberties are tempered by obligations to the common good. That sounds like 1984, not 2021 values book. Anyways, a stance that could justify limits on freedoms. Well, see, he's been coaching Trudeau. Example, energy use and corporate practices. Energy use, they'll throttle your energy coming into your homes if they think you're using too much. It's minus 25 degrees Celsius outside and you're using a lot of power. We're going to kind of do a little brownout here and cool you guys off. That's if they serve broader societal aims. It's all for the common good, right, folks? Critics, especially from Poilievre's camp, paint this as elitist overreach, accusing him of favoring globalist agendas over personal sovereignty. Carney counters by framing such policies as protecting future freedoms. Not daily freedoms right now, but he's thinking about our future freedoms that we won't have. Things like a stable climate over short-term liberties. So he doesn't want us to have freedom right now, but he'll promise that maybe in the future, if they can get the climate to be stabilized, then the people can have some more freedoms. Right? Is that who you really want running the country? Liberals just don't listen. They think he's great. The ESG and environmental, social, and governance. Carney is a prominent advocate of ESG principles, viewing them as essential to modern capitalism. As UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance until early 2025 and co-founder of GFANZ, which he's been indicted for in the U.S. I think it's the, I forget what part of the governments that got him indicted anyways. Anyways, he's pushed for financial institutions to integrate ESG into decision making. The banks bailed out on him, by the way. He was trying to bully them into it. Arguing it mitigates risks and unlocks opportunities, he's credited with mainstreaming climate-related financial disclosures through the TCFD, which he chaired, encouraging companies to report environmental impacts, a cornerstone of ESG's E. Environmental. Carney sees ESG as a tool to redirect capital toward clean energy and penalize high-emission industries. That would be our oil and gas, folks. He's called for mandatory ESG reporting in some contexts, believing markets function better with transparency on climate risks. At Brookfield, he oversees transition investing, blending green projects with selective fossil fuel assets, which he defends as pragmatic ESG application. Social, he's less vocal here. Yeah, because he can't get it to fly. Carney ties social goals to economic inclusion. Example, his housing and tax policies aim to address inequality. His WEF contributions often nod to stakeholder capitalism, suggesting businesses should serve communities, not just shareholders. Those specifics are thin. And governance. As a former regulator, he stresses strong corporate governance to prevent crises like 2008's financial meltdown. He's advocated for boards to prioritize long-term value, including sustainability over short-term profits. Carney rejects anti-ESG critiques, like from Poilievre, who calls it woke over-regulation, by arguing it's about future-proofing economies, not ideology. In 2023 WEF panel, he said ESG isn't charity, it's good business, citing data that ESG-aligned firms often outperform peers. However, his Brookfield role draws scrutiny. Its fossil fuel investments clash with pure ESG ideals, which he justifies as part of a just transition. In other words, he's a hypocrite, and a liar, and a plagiarist, and a creep. Those are just some of his attributes. Comparison and context. Censorship. Carney likely leans toward soft control of narratives, like climate disinformation. Soft control. That's like an iron fist in a velvet glove, right? But hasn't signaled heavy-handed censorship. Oh, it's there. It's on the books. Unlike some progressive calls for speech crackdowns. Freedoms, he prioritizes collective outcomes over absolute individual liberty. So he doesn't believe in absolute liberty for people. He prioritizes collective outcomes. So that's for the greater good. Can you say communism? Contrasting with Poilievre's freedom first rhetoric, which against mandates and taxes. I like that freedom first line. That's good. A nice ring to it. Honk honk. ESG. Carney's a global leader in embedding ESG into finance, seeing it as a market enhancer, while Poilievre dismisses it as burdensome and anti-resource. Go Pierre. In some, Carney views censorship as a potential tool for stability, freedoms as negotiable for the greater good. You going to negotiate your freedoms, folks? You want to negotiate your freedoms with Carney? I don't. Look what he did. They bring out the horses. That's for the greater good. And ESG as a non-negotiable evolution of capitalism, positions reflecting his technocratic globalist roots rather than a populist or libertarian streak. His campaign avoids diving deep into these debates, likely to keep focus on bread and butter issues, but his record offers clear hints. Oh, so freedoms are negotiable with the government, like freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of association, freedom to tell the government you're not happy with them. No, don't want none of that. No, that's all negotiable. We've seen how negotiable it was at the trucker convoy, right, in Ottawa. They didn't negotiate. They brought out the guns and the horses. And this is what we're up against. Then I asked, are the polls for the April 28th election reliable, or could they be wrong, like the 2024 American election with Harris and Trump? Assessing the reliability of polls for the Canadian federal election on April 28th, 2025 compared to the 2024 U.S. presidential election between Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump involves looking at polling methodologies, historical accuracy, and contextual factors. While no definitive prediction can be made about the Canadian polls' accuracy, this is far out. Here's an analysis based on available data and trends as of March 30th. Canadian polls got a mixed track record, generally considered more reliable than U.S. counterparts because of the simpler electoral system. The CBC poll tracker, for instance, aggregates data from firms like Leger, Ipsos, Nanos, and Angus Reid, weighting polls by sample size, recency, and past accuracy. Historically, they've been fairly accurate. CBC poll tracker averages were within 1 to 2 percentage points of the popular vote. For the Liberals, 32.6 polled versus 32.6 actual. Conservatives, 34% polled versus 33.7 actual. Those seat projections had a wider variance. Polls tend to slightly underestimate Conservative support by about 2%. As of late March, polls show a tight race between Carney Liberals and Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. I'm not going to go too much into these polls. They seem to be fairly consistent. They are changing up and down a bit. So I think I'm going to skip this section here because I don't have a lot of faith in the polls right now with what's going on with just the numbers at the rallies. When one guy gets a few hundred and the other guy gets 4 or 5, almost 6,000, and the polls say the opposite, I don't think. It says that in the U.S., Republicans don't generally do polls. I'm kind of thinking the same in Canada. The Conservatives don't really do the polls. I've never been asked to do a poll, or at least not in the last 10 years. They probably know I voted Conservative. That's why they didn't poll me. I don't want to be polled. So I'm going to go on by that one. I'll go to the next question. Would Canada be worse or better off with either a Liberal majority or a Conservative majority? Whether Canada would be worse or better off, the Liberal majority led by Mark Carney or a Conservative majority led by Pierre Poilievre depends on one's priorities, values, and how each leader's policies might play out in practice. Well, this is kind of a moot question too, because I just went over what Carney's ideas are. It's like negotiating our freedoms, freedoms of speech, freedoms of movement, freedoms of any freedom. So I'd say we'd be a lot worse off under Carney. So I'm going to blow by this one too. They go on about the tax cut. It goes on about the tax cuts and whatever. It's back to the ESGs in here. So I'm going to go on to the next question. Actually, what it summed it up as, if you value climate and global standing, Carney's Liberals might make Canada better off long term, positioning it as a green leader, though at a cost to resource regions. If you prioritize affordability and sovereignty, Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives could improve immediate living standards and national pride, might lag in future-proofing the economy, because it's based on oil and gas mainly, but hey, I'd rather have an economy based on oil and gas than windmills and solar panels. So this is a question I asked. What would the end result be if Alberta and Saskatchewan separate from Canada? If Alberta and Saskatchewan were to separate from Canada, the end result would depend on a complex interplay of legal, economic, political, and social factors. As of March 30th, this remains hypothetical, but we can explore plausible outcomes based on current realities. Historical precedents and the province's unique positions. Here's an analysis of what might happen step by step without predicting a single definitive future. The legal and political process. Separation wouldn't be quick or simple. Canada's Constitution and the 1998 Supreme Court ruling on Quebec's secession set a framework. Referendum. A clear majority, not just 51% in a referendum, with a clear question. Should Alberta, Saskatchewan form an independent nation? It's an example. That would be required. The Clarity Act mandates federal approval of the question and result making unilateral secession illegal. Negotiation is, if a clear majority voted yes, Canada would have to negotiate in good faith over the terms like debt division, trade, and borders. Talks could drag on for years, as seen with Brexit, 5 years and counting. Failure to agree could lead to a constitutional crisis. Debt division? I think Ottawa owes Alberta money. I don't think Alberta owes Ottawa any money. Indigenous rights. See, that's a touchy one. Treaty 8 First Nations, covering much of both provinces, have already opposed separation in 2019 statements. Their land rights affirmed by the Constitution Act 1982 and UNDRIP, here comes UNDRIP from the UN, right, would complicate borders and resource claims, potentially stalling or derailing the process. That could get nasty. Outcome. Separation would likely face legal hurdles and require a decade plus of negotiation, assuming overwhelming public support. Polls suggest 20 to 33% favor it now, far from a mandate. The economic implications. Alberta and Saskatchewan are resource powerhouses, 95% of Canada's oil and gas reserves and 75% of its farmland. Separation would reshape their economies and Canada's. The pros of an independent in Alberta, Saskatchewan, they keep all resource revenue, currently 15 to 20 billion annually in equalization payments to other provinces. No carbon taxes or federal regulations could boost oil and gas short term. Alberta's 2024 oil production hit 4.2 million barrels per day, per Stats Can. A new currency or a peg to the US dollar might attract investment. The cons, landlocked, they'd need transit deals with BC, Manitoba, or the US for exports. Wouldn't be too hard to get them through U.S., that's for sure. BC's left-leaning government might resist pipelines. Loss of Canadian market access, 25% of Alberta's trade, and federal subsidies, crop insurance could hurt. Global oil demand is projected to peak by 2035, risking stranded assets. Debt inherited from Canada, $300 billion national debt split by population. $50 billion for them would strain finances. I can't see global oil demand to peak by 2035 in 10 years. I don't know. Whatever. The rest of Canada, what's left of it, the pros, no more Western alienation complaints. Come on. Why haven't the West has reasons to complain. Focus could shift to Eastern priorities like manufacturing or green tech. Windmills and solar panels, folks, that's what we get. The cons, loss of oil and gas revenue would spike energy costs. Ontario imports 10% of its oil from Alberta. Equalization would collapse, hitting Quebec. Right on, $13 billion recipient in 2024, hardest. GDP could drop 10 to 15%. Alberta, Saskatchewan contribute just somewhere around 20% now, triggering a recession. A long one. Outcome, a new nation might thrive briefly on resource wealth, but face long-term risks from isolation and global energy shifts. Canada would suffer economically, possibly fracturing further. Example, Quebec reviving sovereignty. See you later, Quebec. Political and social fallout, new nation, Alberta and Saskatchewan could form a single country. Population of 5.5 million, GDP 450 billion. Canadian, akin to Norway. Conservative government mirroring current UCP and Saskatchewan party dominance might prioritize deregulation and U.S. alignment. Socially, urban-rural divides, Calgary versus rural separatists could spark internal tension. That means all those liberals in Edmonton and Calgary would flood east. Now they go to BC. They go to Vancouver, Lower Mainland. Fit right in. Canada losing 2 provinces might unravel Confederation. Quebec without transfer payments could push for independence. BC might drift toward the U.S. or independence. The Maritimes relying on federal funds could struggle deepening regionalization. Oh yeah. The U.S. angle, some separatists want U.S. statehood. They would need U.S. congressional approval, unlikely given partisan gridlock and no clear U.S. gain beyond oil, already accessible via trade. Trump's 2025 tariff threats might incentivize it, but 21% of Albertans favor this, far from a majority. The end result, best case, Alberta and Saskatchewan carve out a viable, resource-rich nation, negotiating favorable U.S. trade deals while Canada adapts, perhaps becoming leaner and greener. All right, we're going to be green. Tensions ease over decades. The worst case, economic chaos ensues. Canada's recession deepens. The new nation flounders without tidewater access and indigenous resistance, plus regional fractures. Destabilize both entities. Foreign powers, U.S. and China, exploit the vacuum. A likely case, separation talks fizzle due to legal, economic, and social barriers. The provinces stay, but resentment festers, shaping politics. Example, Poilievre's 2025 Canada First pitch for years. Just too many variables with the price of oil and all that stuff, so, and the tariffs, and anyways, everything's up in the air. And here's a question. Here's a question that comes up during every election, federal election here in Canada. Could the PPC take enough votes away from the Conservatives to lose the Conservatives the election? The People's Party of Canada. The People's Party of Canada, led by Maxime Bernier, could theoretically take enough votes from Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party of Canada to cost them the April 28th federal election. But as of March 30th, this scenario appears unlikely based on current polling, historical performance, and electoral dynamics. Here's an analysis of the possibility grounded in data and context. The PPC current standing is consistently polled low nationally. As of late March 2025, the CBC poll tracker places PPC support at around 2 to 3%, trailing the Greens at 3.6%, and far behind the Conservatives at 37 to 39%, and the Liberals 42 to 48%. Per aggregators like 338 Canada and recent polls from Leger, Nanos, and Angus Reid, in the 2021 election, the PPC earned 4.9% of the popular vote, 840,000 votes, but won no seats, as its support was too diffuse to overcome Canada's first-past-the-post system, even in ridings where it performed best. Bernier's boasts, with 28.3%, it couldn't secure victories. Posts on X suggest some PPC optimism, claims of exodus from CPC or potential seat wins, but these lack hard data and reflect sentiment rather than trends. Polls don't show a significant PPC surge. If anything, the Liberals have gained ground since January of 2025, up 10 to 20 points, largely at the expense of the NDP, down to 9%, and Conservatives down from 40 to 45%. And the vote splitting potential. The PPC's voter base overlaps with CPC's, particularly among right-leaning, anti-establishment, resource-focused voters in Western Canada, Alberta and Saskatchewan, and rural Ontario. In 2021, analysis by Global News estimated the PPC cost the CPC 10 to 20 seats by splitting the right-wing vote in close races, letting Liberals or NDP win with pluralities. For example, Elmwood, Transcona, Manitoba, CPC lost by 1,234 votes. PPC took 2,062. Edmonton Centre, Alberta, CPC lost by one petroleum. I'm not sure what they mean there, what it means. PPC took 1,662. Don't make sense. I think Grok screwed up. If the PPC doubles its 2021 vote to 10%, unlikely given current 2 to 3% polling, it could flip tight ridings again. With 343 seats in play, a CPC majority needs 172. Current projections, 338 Canada, March 28th, give Conservatives 130 to 150 seats, Liberals 160 to 180, and others, NDP, Bloc, Greens, the rest, losing 10 to 20 seats to PPC-driven splits could drop the CPC below 135, risking a Liberal minority or majority if Carney consolidates center-left. So, but it's this strategic voting, for one thing. If progressive voters, if they rally behind Carney to counter Trump, as seen with NDP defections. On the right, CPC loyalists might resist PPC temptation if Poilievre frames it as handing Carney the win. So the likelihood, the PPC could theoretically cost the CPC a majority by splitting 5 to 15 seats, dropping them from, say, 175 to 160, allowing a Liberal minority with NDP bloc support. But a total CPC loss, Liberals winning outright, requires a perfect storm. So, not likely. Doesn't help, but it's probably not it's possible, right? It all everything's got to fall in line, right, for it to happen. But in this election, I don't know. It says as of now, they're not poised to take enough votes to lose Conservatives the election. Might deny Poilievre a majority or give Carney a minority. What else have I got here? Try to get down through a few of these. Okay, that was what's Mark Carney and Mark Wiseman. Why are they tied in together on this? But I think we know. The seat projection in Quebec. Seat projections for Quebec in the upcoming Canadian federal election vary depending on the source methodology, reflecting the province's 78 seats and its unique political dynamics, including the presence of Bloc Québécois as of March 30th. There's a synthesis based on available polling data, aggregators, and projection models, like those from 338 Canada, CBC Poll Tracker, and others. They're looking at Liberals at 35 to 36% in Quebec, a surge since Mark Carney took leadership, bolstered by Francophone support and Trump-related economic fears. Bloc Québécois, 25 to 31%, less than the Liberals, competitive but slipping from its 2021 peak of 32 seats, 32% of the vote. The separatist appeal wanes against national unity narratives. They're wrapping themselves in the flag, those Liberals now. They called it a hate symbol, but now they love it. Conservatives, 20 to 23%, lagging due to weaker Francophone outreach and Pierre Poilievre's focus on Western issues. The NDP, 6 to 10%. PPC, they're negligible. Seat projection, Bloc around 24 to 26 seats. Liberals 35 to 45 seats. They're big in Quebec. Conservatives 8 to 15. NDP 0 to 3. Greens and PPC 0. I don't like this one. What are the expected seat counts in Atlantic Canada for all parties in the upcoming federal election? Liberal Party of Canada, range 24 to 28 seats. Estimate around 26 to 27 seats. Conservatives, range 4 to 8 seats, around 5 to 6 seats. NDP, 0 to 1 seats, estimate 0 seats. Green Party, 0. People's Party, 0. Of course, the Bloc's not there. So it looks like a Liberal sweep here that I'm dealing with. I don't understand them. I do not understand the people here. Okay. Here's another one people might be wondering. If Mark Carney fails to win the Nepean riding in the April 28th Canadian federal election, the consequences, because I asked what happens if Mark Carney fails to get elected in the Nepean riding. The consequences would ripple through his leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada, the election outcome, and Canada's political landscape. As of March 30th, here's what could happen based on constitutional norms, party dynamics, and current context. The immediate outcome. Carney remains Prime Minister temporarily. Carney was sworn in as Prime Minister on March 15th after Justin Trudeau buggered off. And Carney's appointment via Liberal caucus and party executive selection, no leadership race per LPC rules. Even if he loses Nepean, he stays Prime Minister until a new government forms post-election. As the incumbent manages the transition, Constitutional Convention. Election night scenarios. Liberal majority if the LPC wins 172 plus seats, or 130 to 171 minority with NDP bloc support. Carney's loss doesn't oust him immediately. He'd remain Prime Minister, but lack of parliamentary seat, so he wouldn't be allowed in the House of Commons. If there's a Conservative victory, if Pierre Poilievre of CPC wins, 172 or minority with most seats, Carney's loss accelerates his exit. Poilievre would form government, and Carney's tenure ends once the Governor-General, Mary Simon, invites the CPC leader, likely within days of April 28th. No seat, no problem. Short term. A Prime Minister doesn't need to be an MP to govern. Canada's Constitution Act of 1867 requires only that the Prime Minister command the House's confidence, not sit in it. Historical precedent exists. John Turner was Prime Minister from June 30th to September 17th, 1984, without a seat after losing Vancouver Quadra. Carney could lead from outside Parliament, briefly. A by-election requirement. Convention demands a Prime Minister be an MP within a reasonable time, typically 3 to 6 months. If the LPC wins, Carney would need a safe Liberal seat vacated for him to run in a by-election, like Ottawa Centre, St. John's South, Mount Pearl, where Seamus O'Regan, retiring. The by-elections must be called within 180 days of a vacancy. Party and political fallout. Liberal confidence in the Nepean loss would embarrass Carney, who parachuted into the riding after Catherine McKenna's exit. That's not right. That's not right. It was Chandra Aria that was there. Grok screwed up again. With Nepean leaning Liberal, 45% Liberal, 35% Conservative, I think the Conservative might win there myself. But a tight race with CPC's Devinder Shori could flip it. That's not who's running. It's a woman, a cop, ex-military. Yeah, that's strange. Anyways, he could hang in there for a little bit. That would be another mess. So, if Carney loses Nepean, he'll still lead a victorious LPC government from outside Parliament. He can stand outside the door of the House of Commons once they close it, and he can stand out there, I guess, and maybe talk to the media or something. I think that'd be funny. Not good for us, but if Canada breaks up, would the USA accept all the fractured provinces? Basically, no. Wouldn't take the East Coast. They really don't want Quebec. And not impressed with Ontario. They'd accept probably Alberta, Saskatchewan. BC would eventually have to end up joining up with Washington State. That's basically what the answer was on this. I'm not going to go through it. It's a long answer drawn out. Would the Canadian dollar go up or down with either a Conservative or Liberal government? Yeah, there's many factors in there. It's really hard to predict. That's another long answer with no actual conclusion. The dollar's tanked right now anyways, so I asked what geographical locations are Canada's oil and gas located. Actually, Nova Scotia, Conservative government, the Premier just allowed he took off the restrictions or whatever it's called there on natural gas fracking. So he's all for it. But since we lost our Conservative Premier, and that's sketchy too, we got this little dwarf female that is a Liberal, and it's a moratorium. She's all keeping that moratorium on natural gas. We're not going to get that out of the ground. We're going to leave it in there. So that's the liberal mindset. Trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. You got, where is it here? They got, I've gone over this before, but Nova Scotia, they have, they got the Sable Offshore Energy Project. I thought that was running out of gas. I thought they'd taken most of that out off that Scotian shelf. Oh yeah, produced until 2018. But it was still recoverable reserves. The initial ones were 3 trillion cubic feet. Deep Panuke added another 0.6 trillion cubic feet. The remaining potential in Nova Scotia, 8 to 10 trillion cubic feet of undiscovered recoverable gas in the Scotian Basin. High-cost environmental policies have stalled the exploration. You got the Horton Bluff Formation, Windsor-Connecticut Basin in Nova Scotia. Has 69 trillion cubic feet of gas in place. Frederick Brook Shale, Moncton, New Brunswick, straddling Nova Scotia's portion of 67 to 80,000 trillion cubic feet in place. CBM, coal bed methane in Stellarton, 2.5 to 3 trillion cubic feet. New Brunswick, Frederick Brook Shale, 67 to 80 trillion cubic feet. McCully Field near Sussex, 0.05 trillion cubic feet. Other shale are 5 to 10 trillion cubic feet. It's a lot of gas. Now, how many candidates do the parties have right now, each party in Canada, out of, they just added seats. I think it's 343 ridings now. The Liberal Party has 301 candidates out of the 343 ridings. Conservatives have 324 out of 343. NDP have 217. The Bloc 78. Green Party has 208. People's Party has 150 to 200. So the Liberals don't have as many as Conservatives, which is a good thing. So what are the predictions for the cost of living in Canada for 2025? Predicting the cost of living in Canada for 2025 involves analyzing current economic trends, policy decisions, and external pressures like U.S. tariffs based on data available as March 30th, global commodity prices, geopolitical events. There's a bunch of stuff that affect it, right? There's general increase. Consumer Price Index tracks the cost of fixed basket of goods and services, expected to rise modestly. Monthly estimates for an individual. The average cost of living is projected to rise from $2,000 to $3,500 a month. That's a big jump. That's for an individual. No, it's $2,000 to $3,500 a month, and it's going to go from up to $2,100 to $3,700 a month for an individual. For a family of 4, right now, $4,000 to $6,000 a month, and that's going to increase $4,200 to $6,300. Housing rents are going to increase. I think they're saying around 6%. I guess every place is different. Quebec City 11%, Edmonton 9%, Toronto 5%, Vancouver 4%. Food, You can expect a 3 to 5% increase, outpacing the 2% inflation target. Family of four's annual food bill is expected to rise from $16,032 in 2024 to $16,833 to $17,000, an extra $800. Meat is 4.6%, vegetables 3.5%. They lead the surge. Softer loonie raises import costs. Climate impacts. There was a drought out west. They get another one. That hurts. Fuel in transit, gas prices tied to oil could rise 5 to 10%. Pushing the average cost from 150 to 160 a liter to 158 to 176 cents a liter. Utilities, basic utilities, 284 a month in 2024 to rise 2 to 4%, 290 to 296 per provincial trends. Healthcare, out-of-pocket costs, drugs, dental may rise 50 to 200 a month. Clothing and goods likely 3 to 5% increase. So that's our outlook for our economy. And that was basically what I did, was look up a bunch of that stuff. So that was Grok. I see that Grok made some mistakes in there, and it's far from perfect. It's just grabbing a bunch of stuff offline and posting it all on there. So Lawrence PBC has now over 300. You're on their website. Yeah, this, like I say, this Grok, it grabs some stuff off the internet, and it's basically a search engine, right? So it's let's see. You're paying $1,200 rent for one bedroom. There's Faye. $897 heat and hydro included for a one bedroom. That hurts. Not too bad, I guess. That's still quite a bit. Let's see, what else? Who else we got here? I'm going to shut this one down. I don't need this on. Get it out of the way. Or bring it up. Phil, if I did not pay off my house, I'd be living in a cardboard box right now. That's the problem. Well, a lot of people are. So I know I don't have payments on this place, but the monthly rent for a lot is like, it's almost $400, which is ridiculous. Phil, very much like to see Doge in Canada. Yeah, no kidding. You won't get it under Carney, that's for sure. We won't get it under Carney. Lawrence 4-bedroom home, $870. Whew. Try to get back through here a bit. So anyways, yeah, it's been all haywire. And like I say, tomorrow it's going to be 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be live streaming Pierre Poilievre in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So I'm expecting a big turnout. We got the radicals are going to show up and try to upset everything, but that's not going to happen. There's a lot of pretty good old tough type of guys in the lineup that will kind of go toe to toe. Probably put the run to them. I think we got probably going to have some farmers coming in from outside the city. I know we will. These guys change tractor tires and stuff. They ain't going to put up with any nonsense. I think all they got to do is just let out a little bit of a roar at these guys and they'll probably soil their pants. So not too concerned about that. Like I say, they get in my face with a mask. Their mask is coming off. I'm going to have them on video and see who they are. I mean, the NDP have collapsed and gone liberal, yeah. Yeah, Singh has destroyed that party. They're gone. So now we're down to two major parties. It's not looking good for them. It's no loss. That's why we're in this mess anyways. Yeah. Phil, yeah, people losing jobs, losing homes, can't pay mortgages right now. Tent cities are growing. The food banks are the busiest spot in towns and cities. It was funny, my washing machine broke here a couple of months ago. I haven't replaced it yet. I go to my sister's place. She's about a half-hour drive away, do laundry, and I'd like to check on her. She's got early onset dementia and she's going down fast. I go every 3 weeks so I can see her deteriorating fast. But there was an ad online for a free washing machine. I had set up, I was going to go look at it, needed to repair. But I looked again, it was on Facebook Marketplace, and there was a red maple leaf, and it said elbows up. And I figured I better not go there. I know I'm going to say something if I see that. I'd have to tell her it's not elbows. You might have elbows up, but we got fingers up. So that's our symbol to you. That's our reply to elbows up. I get back to her, I said, I don't think I'll bother, lady. Yeah, elbows up. Elbows down now. Carney had his elbows up, now he's got them down. Because Trump had a talk with him. There's something going on there. I'm not sure what's going on. Nobody knows. Something up though. It's sharp. Homelessness is up 12% over the last year. That's really sad. So many Turkish-looking men everywhere. So obvious foreign. Yeah, same here. They're everywhere. NDP had 23% last year. He screwed it up over a pension. Yeah. Yeah, he walks away with a pension, and the Canadians are broke. But we'll be paying his pension out of our taxes. What a dirtbag. He was a millionaire anyways. It's not like he needed it. You can't get any more disgusting than Singh, really. Well, Carney maybe, but not even. Singh is just pure dirtbag, eh? Bill Woodchipper for Singh, yeah. Denny, I think Carney caved in on Trump demand. I'm not sure what's going on there. Moose on the Loose has got a video I just watched today. He just put it out today. It's kind of interesting there, what he was going over. There's a few things coming out here on this. Marie Kushner's skyscraper mortgage paid by Brookfield. That was before Carney was there. That was 2018. Carney got in 2020, I think it was, or 2022. I'm not sure. I think it was 20. I'm not sure. One or the other. But Carney's got rents a suite in Trump Tower. Something's going on. Something very, very crooked is going on here. I mean, you look at that Liberal Leadership Convention, it wasn't a leadership convention, it was just a gathering to welcome Carney in as the leader, was all that was. These tariffs, the way he's dealing with them now, he just flipped all of a sudden. 2 days before that, he was saying that the old relationship with the U.S. is over. It's not like that anymore. And then a couple of days later or a day later, we got a call from President Trump, and yeah, we're going to talk. President Trump said, well, they're going to talk after the election's over and he's prime minister. How does Donald Trump know that Carney's going to win the election? Like, something really stinky going on here. Marie, they seem to be more than acquaintances. Yeah, there's something up. So, I don't know. We're going to find out anyways. We'll see. What do we got, 4 more weeks? Emma, that's exactly what you asked, eh? So, I don't know. It just stinks. Brookfield bailed out Kushner, yeah. You see, it's just, the whole thing is crooked. They stole the Ruby Dalla's money and Maria, they stole his money. That's $700,000 they stole. Kicked them out. Wouldn't let them run in the party. Chandra had been in 10 years, well liked. That's why I think Carney might not win that. It's fairly close between the woman running for the Conservatives and Carney. So we'll see how that goes. I would just love it, and so would a lot of people, if Carney didn't win his seat. Marie, also Qatar. You know what? I did a video way back. I haven't gone to look into it in my private videos. I privatized a bunch of them. And it was on a meeting with, it was in British Columbia at UBC with Qatar. It was Canadian government. And I'm not sure who was at that meeting. Anyways, I was wondering, what's going on with Qatar? Why are we meeting with Qatar out in UBC? And I forget. Now, I went through that. I'm going to see if I can find that video. See if I can look it up. If I can find it, maybe I'll repost it. I don't know. Or at least find out what it was about. So there's something up there, too, that stinks. This whole thing stinks. We're sold out. We've been sold out. This election right now, it's been thrown. The only hope I got is look what happened in the U.S. They had Kamala going to win there, and it's going to be a huge win for the Democrats, and nope, it didn't work out. Too big to rig. I'm hoping it's the same here, and it better be paper ballots too. Not Dominion voting machines. So, anyways, that's where we're at. Check in tomorrow and catch the live stream if you're interested. And we'll see how many people show up. I bet it's going to be a huge turnout. Even for a hardcore liberal city, I think we're going to have a huge turnout. So, Phil, same as when Harper got a majority, same when Trudeau got a majority. When Harper lost, the Conservatives were doing great, and all of a sudden, Trudeau in the last 2 weeks, I think it was, zoomed right up, right, and won the election. And that blew me away. So we never give up hope. It's gonna. I really do think that the Conservatives are going to take it, and then I'll be smiling. I'll be a happy day. So okay, folks. Awesome. Thanks for joining in, and we'll do it again next week, and hopefully you can catch it tomorrow, the live stream, and we'll catch that rally with Pierre. So bye for now. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow. If I can find out where I'm at.